So just a bit of a recap. I started Aikido because I wanted somebody's business. Moved to Cambridge, got to Orange Belt, wanted to do more Aikido. So I asked the teacher if we could do it. He said yes. So I was like, he was concerned he couldn't take another class on. So twice a week we had Aikido. Thursdays he would teach. Tuesdays ended up I seemed to be elected to teach. I was always trying to put forward my partner, and in the end we sort of done a split where he would teach sometimes and I would teach others. It depended when I just got back from a seminar. Between Orange Belt and First Dan, I would do twice a week there, once a week in London on a Sunday. And I'd done this non-stop for 2 years. After 2 years, I started going. I think I must have become first queue. So I don't know how many years it was since I first started at that point. I'd become first queue, and I was then allowed to go on the Monday night to do weapons training. In the end, a journey becomes very short. It was 56 miles there, 56 miles back. The teachers always wanted to go in the pub, being the hut was in the pub grounds, and the teachers would always want to go in the pub afterwards and have a social, and that was very nice because you got a chance to talk to the senses, and they'd give you pointers and things they thought you could improve on the tatami. And I had a very good friend who would help me and really give me pointers. He emigrated eventually to New Zealand. So some weeks, not all the time, because I had got a very busy life as well at home, running a business, building a family. I had my second child then, 2 girls. So life had its struggles. The mortgage at that time started off very low, and recently the mortgages for people have gone up to, I believe, 5% or perhaps even more. I had to contend with a mortgage percent raise increase of 16%. Can you imagine it? 16%. Because in money terms, those days and nowadays are the same. We earn in proportion to what our mortgage was allowed. It went up 16%, and I just didn't know how I could keep working. I put my rates up. That I do remember, and I'm very worried about it. I took on a lady to answer the telephone, but from her home, not in the business, because it was cheaper to do that, and that way the telephone could be answered while us workers in the main workshop could get on with our work, earn money. So I think I was a reasonable business person. So I get to second Dan, and not being used much by anybody, but still enjoying my Aikido. And I'll just jump in here and say that even though I was training every week, 3 times a week, and sometimes 4 times a week, if I went to London twice, I used to take my Ken or Joe, and I took my Ken or Joe from the time I was an orange belt, I believe. It was either yellow or orange. I'm just going to show you this book. It's volume 1 of Saito Sensei's first volumes. They came out in 1973, and I bought them, I think, when I had my first ever credit card. I think it was about 1975 I bought mine. Anyhow, I went to London. There was a shop there, Secura Trading they were called. They had all 5 volumes, and they had black and white cine films, Cine Super 8. Now these films came in a box with cassettes, small cassettes with the voice overs on them. So you'd have to have a cassette player and a projector. And I bought that as well. So I maxed out on my £100 credit card, and I bought the films and the books. And I went home very proud, knowing that I'd got from the books and the films. So from then on, when I wasn't training, I would, and my wife used to go out, and I can't remember what she'd go out for, but anyway, she would go out, and that gave me a chance to put the cine films on, and I had to get the tape just, so it took quite a bit of juggling to get the voice exactly right with the actions on the film of Saito Sensei. So these were black and white films. I had patio doors in this house, so I could have the projection screen shining so that I could see the projection screen while I stood outside on my patio doors. So I would stand there with a Joe and I'd watch Saito Sensei. I'd run in, stop the projector, go back outside, and I would do the Joe Saburis or whatever the katas were on the film. And I used to do this on the nights that my wife would go out. If I couldn't train in the evenings, each morning before I went to work, I would get up early and I would go to my garage. It was in a village by the name of Grantchester. It's a famous village. And we had small dogs as well, and I would walk the dogs and take my Ken or Joe and go down by the river where there was trees and fences and different things, and I would train every single morning with Ken or Joe. I done this from when I was I believe yellow or orange belt. I done what I've been telling you for the next 23 years. There was not one day I wouldn't train. When I say train, it may have been walking the dogs and I may have stopped and just trained for 15 minutes. But before I would go to bed at night, at the back door I would have a Ken. I would just open the back door, swing the Ken perhaps 2-3 times, nothing much, but just so that I could do something before the end of the day. Perhaps by now you're thinking that I was more than a fanatic, and yes, looking back on it, I totally agree. I would go away on holiday, it doesn't matter what country, every country sells broom handles, and you can either use it as a Ken or a Joe. I would be performing on the beach. Of course I was a little embarrassed, but the importance of doing it was more important than worrying about people watching me. And over the years, many people did. I wasn't satisfied, even with all this progression and all this training. You know, you sometimes feel like you're walking through thick mud. You think you're getting better, but you've got nobody to really answer it, because if the teachers are not using you for uke anymore, all your friends are finding you really difficult to train with, even though they're happy to, it becomes more like a fight than a good workout. I was becoming more grounded. The things by training daily is you become more grounded, your mind expands more, you know, far more. more. I looked around and I found some really good teachers on the film. Aikido is what was run by Stan Pranin. He used to, at that time, do a magazine in those days. And every month the magazine would come out. I think it was monthly, maybe quarterly, but I subscribed to it. I thought the only thing I can do is write to him. So I wrote to him and asked him what he thought of a particular sensei who I thought was superb. Really loved his beautiful knee work and smoothness. I watched him do a 10-minute demonstration on his knees, then standing, and I was in awe of this master. So I wrote to him and said about it. He writes back and says, thank you for contacting him, but the master who I saw was quite young. He was in his 30s, and even though one day he's sure he will be a great master, if you want the one master that he considered the ultimate best, he said, I have to be careful who I say this to because I interview all of them and none of them would like it if I tell you that this is the best and only one that you should be looking at. And it's very strange because I only chose Saito Sensei because he was the only person at the time who'd done a series of books and film. And I'm the sort of person who's really good at copying. I'm better at copying than following books, really. And I told you how I copied it with the film. Show a bit, go and do it, look at it again, go and do it again. And this is how I learned, or taught myself. He suggested Saito Sensei. And I thought, well, I don't know, I've been watching his films for such a long time, but he looks like a bull, you know, he doesn't look smooth and beautiful and all these flowing things, and yet Stan Pranin is saying this teacher is the only one that O-Sensei chose to manage his dojo while he was alive, being the dojo senior, and while he could have left the dojo and all the surroundings to his sons, but he chose Saito Sensei and Saito Sensei's wife to look after O-Sensei and his wife in their old age. And he also said that he was his best student and he was true to his style. And at the time he didn't like what his son was doing, and that's in other films, and I don't wish to go into that now. So my life has been completely planned out. I wouldn't have believed in it earlier, but looking back on it, it's been completely planned out. Every step I wouldn't change. My friend, who I told you about in the other film, had moved and emigrated to New Zealand. He said, oh, your teacher, I hear, has just retired from the railway. He was about 50, I believe, Saito Sensei. And he's going to come and do a seminar here. There's about 60 people, I think it was 62 eventually, people, and if you can get a flight out here, I'll put you up and pay for the seminar. So I got the money together, went out there, met Saito Sensei. First time I ever really drunk alcohol in a big way. I said to him, I apologise, through a translator, I apologise, Sensei, I can't speak Japanese. And this is why I love the man so much. He looked at me and said, why would you want to speak Japanese when you're English? From that day on, he'd become my master, like a fatherly figure, somebody you could talk to. We talked over the years about how to design a garden. He asked me how did I prune my roses and make them better than his roses. We talked about dojo life. Of course, a lot of the conversation was about O-sensei. And as I said in my previous film, he wasn't the best student O-sensei had. He said, we were driving in this yellow Ford Escort, and he said, I want you with me wherever I go on this trip. So I would sit in the back, he would sit in the front, and the interpreter was Andre, a Swedish uchideshi that he brought with him, doing the translation. And he said, you know, Tai Sensei was the best student O-sensei ever had, and O-sensei said, he's the only person who can surpass me. So he said, I wasn't the best student, but I stayed with O-sensei. I was the one there for 24 unbroken years. Me and my wife looked after O-sensei. Wherever O-sensei went, I would go. When sensei would ring the bell, I would run across from my house to his. As you may know, O-sensei gave him a small piece of land, told him to build a bungalow and to be at their beck and call for the rest of their lives. So he gave his word to O-sensei. That was the partnership made. He carried on until his death, looking after the Iwama dojo, trying to carry on O-sensei's wishes and his Aikido form. Thank you for listening so far. I hope you're enjoying it. I'd now found my master in New Zealand because he used me. I grabbed him, I attacked him, whatever I'd done, he threw me like a paper aeroplane. I never knew where I was, I never knew how I got there. I didn't know that I could do high falls, but he could do them on me, completely disorientated me. Never had that feeling in my life ever before from any master, not Japanese or English. I then made him my master for nearly 20 years. I believe it was 19 years I followed him, but previous to that I followed him in books and film. Thank you for listening. The story will continue.